Thank you all for joining us for a very topical discussion. Unprecedented public support for pharma, an opportunity to lead like never before. The pharmaceutical industry's reputation is changing for the better, driven by the industry's innovative and heartfelt response to the pandemic. Companies have an opportunity to build on their communication strategies and step up to lead important new conversations with the understanding that the public is actively listening in a new way. I'd like to introduce our panel for today. I'd like to start with our host this morning, Wendy Lund, a 2020 PharmaVOICE 100. Wendy is CEO of GCI Health, a global integrated healthcare communications agency. Through her almost 30 years of healthcare communications and marketing experience, Wendy has worked with a diverse group of pharmaceutical, biotech, medical technology companies globally and in the US on a corporate level and across a variety of disease categories. Also joining us are Rob Jekielek, Managing Director of Harris Poll, which has been tracking US public opinion, motivations, and social sentiment since 1963. Rob has more than 18 years of experience building and leading corporate brand and reputation development relationships. And Laura Randa, a 2018 and 2013 PharmaVOICE 100. She serves as VP Market Access, Health Economics and Outcomes Research and Public Policy for Mycovia Pharmaceuticals. She has more than 22 years experience in market access, policy, specialty pharmacy, and trade, and has launched 31 products in diverse disease categories. For more information about our panelists, please go to pharmavoice100.com. And now I'm going to turn it over to Wendy, and she's going to tell us about why this topic is of such great interest to her and how GCI is raising the bar. Wendy, all you.
Great. Hi there. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Laura and Rob for joining me this morning. Laura, congratulations. I'm so happy for you, and Rob, always a pleasure to be with you. And I just want to thank you guys at PharmaVOICE for this great honor, and excited about our session. So I've worked in this industry my entire career, and I have to say, and I've been through some amazing points in my career in this industry, but I have to say, this is one of those points where I have never been more inspired and have more pride in the way our industry has rose up to try to deal with this extremely challenging time, a time that none of us have ever in our lives ever imagined could happen. Our reputation over the industry and the pharmaceutical industry is really at a once-in-a-generation inflection point and is now higher, as Rob will talk about, than at any point over the last 15 years. And that's something we should all be thinking about in terms of sustainability and what's gotten us here and how we stay that way. As healthcare organizations have been adjusting their focus to manage the COVID-19 pandemic and halt its spread, they're still continuing to meet the needs of healthcare professionals, patients they serve every day. And there's definitely a challenge for many organizations doing that. And it's truly gratifying and really energizing for me to be part of this industry that has stepped forward in such an incredible way and taken the lead in developing and delivering the most critical diagnostics, treatments, vaccines that will help us through this massive public health crisis. So at the same time, the role of healthcare communicators has never been more distinct and perhaps essential, as we have been tasked with transforming the way we deliver messaging, information, content, and this has created a unique opportunity for the industry to lead like never before. And I hope we will all rise up and lead like never before, because we seem to be running with it, and that's great to see, and I'm looking forward to continuing to be a part of that. So with the advent of COVID-19, every person in the world has really become a consumer of healthcare and has become hyper aware of the growing needs of our clients from a communications perspective. And we've redefined and reframed our full spectrum of offerings we provide in order to ensure we're not just communicating change in healthcare, but really inspiring it. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
I agree with you, Wendy, that we are hearing that across the board, that this is an incredible opportunity for pharma to really, in the industry, to really capitalize on, and not capitalize in that monetary way that we think about often, but really taking opportunity to seize those opportunities to improve the patient journey, to take control and better control of how we manage patient health and patient care. So Rob, I know that through Harris, you have been doing a lot of research. You want to fill us in a little bit of the most recent, I know this is hot off the press, so we're excited, some of the most recent data that you can share with us?
Yeah, of course. Always a big thank you to our host, Taren. Thank you, Wendy. Love doing these conversations with you. Big fan of GCI, and Laura. It's really nice to meet you and collaborate with you for the first time. So just as Taren said, the Harris Poll, we've been around since 1963, and we've been doing public research across politics, society, business for that time. In one of the big focuses at the Harris Poll is healthcare, and especially pharmaceuticals. It's a domain that we know very well, and we work virtually across every therapeutic area. And I was going to say, I love your background, Laura, because we actually do a lot of work in the payer space, which I think is more important today than it ever has been before. And just as we all know, right, this whole lens of kind of patient centricity, I think, is really kind of coming to the forefront, right? As you're seeing a lot of the both positive and negative byproducts of COVID, understanding how, what patients are dealing with is more important than ever before. But to the bigger picture, I think that, again, we are seeing this once in a generation inflection point. When we look at the industry itself, we've been tracking the reputation of the industry for over 15 years. And you're just seeing this, massive inflection point, 2 times higher in terms of strong reputation than we've ever seen. And when you see this kind of spike, and it's a unique spike. So many industries have actually had some positive momentum. And I will say for many, it's actually waned. For example, auto had some momentum going up into May, but now that's actually very much softened. Tech as an industry, as an example, was on its way up. And I think everyone kind of knows and has seen on their phones, on their social media accounts, why it's actually waned quite a bit as well, and is more on the downturn. But when we put that in contrast to pharmaceuticals, you're still on this steep incline. And when you see these kinds of steep inclines, it's not that there's just some sort of new kind of message that suddenly is magically resonating. It's that, especially in this case, the public is seeing a very different lens on, who the industry is, how it acts, and what it really stands for. So as when we look at a lot of the reasons for why is there this massive surge in positive sentiment and really kind of change in expectations, a big part of it is obviously around the vaccine, right? You've had a lot of companies kind of rally around developing a vaccine, but as you start looking through the reasons and what people can really kind of get their head around, there's a lot of components that are a lot more interesting as well, right? There has been, in addition, a lot of direct recognition for support of medical workers, so that's great. But you also see this really unique blend of collaboration. And that's since the beginning of COVID, and around vaccines and around sharing. It's also around just kind of being able to rally around employees. But most recently, I think it's actually very interesting, and this kind of, I'm jumping to the end of the story versus the beginning, even this week, right? When you see a lot of the major players pulling together to put together a petition around vaccines. And, again, when you talk about 9 companies connecting as quickly as they have, I mean, that's record speed, right? And really speaks to the power of corporate affairs, corporate communications, and really being able to gel and, work in a very constructive way. So that collaboration feature is really interesting. And then many people have actually been picking up on information and communication from pharma companies, right? That's actually, one of the things we've found very intriguing is that communications and marketing and even advertising have more stickiness today than we've ever seen. And one of the big reasons for that is much of it has moved from just kind of the almost generic kind of, DTC ad that everyone can kind of play through in their mind, right? Of like, there's a lake, there's a couple, they're riding bikes, and it plays that in some way, shape, or form. Where there's much more of a direct focus on, the people that are most in need, patients, employees, and to a large degree, what the industry really stands for, and that's through individual companies in the industry. And so like science, right? And again, this is, getting ahead of the story, you certainly see this narrative of right now science versus politics, right? Which it's a little bit ugly. And, as of last week, we did some research with Stat News where, 78% of the public were saying that the FDA approval process is being more driven by politics than it is by science, right? It's startling, it's scary, because it's, again, the industry has always had a mixed relationship with the FDA and up and down. But as the FDA goes, so does the industry, right? Which is why things like the petition this week are so important. And just, I'll give a couple of really quick examples. In terms of the stickiness of information, like again, communications is more important than ever. getting information out, right? Like there's this whole sense today, when pharma companies say something, it actually has resonance because of the relevance of the companies, right? So when we look at a lot of the big announcements, whether they were, you know, Pfizer's deal with the government, right? Or whether it was around Moderna going into phase 3 trials, or even around Gilead and some of the pricing pieces, all of them have a net very positive impact, both on individual companies as well as the industry, right? And I would say, again, we thought that maybe we'd see a little bit more negativity on something like Gilead, but not so much, right? The public could actually get their head around that this really is kind of a solution to a big problem. And again, knowing many people on this call are real insiders, like you guys have seen. You've seen Gilead in pricing, right? Everyone has seen kind of, and is very kind of, I think when we talk about pricing, I think it's a bit of a lightning rod for many people on this call, right? Because you've felt it and experienced it directly in ways that are, you know, pretty contentious, if you will. But anyway, so
Yeah.
massive inflection point. Oh, please go ahead, Taren.
No, I was going to say, please continue on. There's just a lot coming at us as a population and as an industry. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your thought there.
No, so I think the setup is really around, you know, we're at this once in a generation inflection point, and it's not just this random happenstance of perceptions kind of flowing up because companies are seen as great. It's really this unique and distinctive piece for pharma. And you can actually see like the pull through of how pharma companies have changed their operations, right? In terms of how they're now able to communicate, how they're able to collaborate, and their ability to move fast, right? Hopefully not too fast, right? Because and all the research is you certainly do see as, you know, a vaccine kind of getting there too fast feels a little uncomfortable for people. But again, what does too fast mean, right? That's really where communication becomes really important, really kind of reinforcing the safety protocols, things like the pledge help a lot. So anyway, a lot to discuss, but and I think Laura and Wendy have been even deeper in the trenches on all this. So I think can really bring the story to life a lot better than I can.
So if you don't mind, Wendy, I'll ask Laura to weigh in since she's working at a pharmaceutical company, and I'd love to know what her perception is on this, and then we'll round out the conversation for this first part with you, Wendy. So Laura?
Yeah, thank you so much. Congratulations, Taren, for delivering another amazing Top 100 opportunity to inform and educate people in the industry, and very excited to be part of such an esteemed panel with such expertise. I couldn't agree with both Wendy and Rob. We are so lucky right now to be in such a noble industry with such a direct purpose on impact to patient lives, transforming, saving, protecting lives every single day. And even in our tough days, you know, we are bringing some good to somebody somewhere. And that's been really important. Now we fast forward to where we are today in the ecosystem with COVID-19. And things could even not be even more, you know, elevated. So we even have more of a purpose today as an industry to get closer to that purpose than we are right now today. I think there was a lot of information that Rob, you know, kind of shared around all the information, and you know,
it's a lot.
That's a lot. But I will dig right into
build on what Rob does. He's so awesome.
which really is the part that we actually can have rich dialogue and conversation and progress the information. But you know, I'll hop into something that's been on everybody's mind. You know, not only from the perspective of bringing innovation to the market, but you know, how are we going to price this product? And I think that's such a critical component that many people are thinking about that. While it may be a very important part of the political conversation, you know, one of the things that is really likely to be is that the importance of this amazing innovation that's happening at such a rapid pace in terms of COVID treatments and vaccines. So the industry, I believe, you know, has brought a lot of goodwill because people are working 24/7, night and day, to bring and help prevent this devastating, disease. So, and I think the other part of this is that everybody started to give us a little peek of how the pricing of these vaccines are going to potentially be. And everybody is talking around $40 or, you know, around that number. And when we really think about the impact of economic and social effects of COVID and what the vaccine does, this is a very, very reasonable price. And then I would also think about, you know, as I think through this, we continue as an industry to see this innovation and to invest in this innovation. But we're seeing a huge shift from this focus on volume to value-based medicines, price to value. And, you know, that we've seen a huge shift with that. And I think that's actually seen by a recent release from Mycovia, actually, that actually looked at in 2018 about what real price increases have been. So list prices may be increasing, but on a confidential net basis, net prices for branded medications only grew 0.3% in 2018, which I think is really important for us to, you know, to have those conversations. I think as an industry, we probably have not done a real fantastic job of talking about, you know, what is the net pricing strategy? You know, everybody sees the list pricing, but we really need to talk about all the other costs, you know, of putting it into the channel and the funnel. So I think the good news is, moving forward, pricing and access will definitely be a major component in the presidential debates. We absolutely know 60 days and under 60 days and counting. But combined with this COVID-19 pandemic, there's so many ways that we can talk about all the different things that this industry is bringing to the table. And I look forward to continued conversations during this time around that, but so proud to be part of this industry and you know, representing manufacturers of bringing this important innovation to patients. Thank you.
That was excellent, Laura. And Wendy, I saw you nodding your head vigorously there at different points. And one of the points was about that value shift. Do you want to talk about that? And I know you have a lot of experience in this and communicating what the value is of these medicines that are being brought to patients.
Yeah, I mean, I think the United States has learned a huge lesson through COVID-19. I mean, I think that we, having been so hard hit by the virus, I think it's been eye-opening for anybody who works in anybody in this country, but specifically those of us who work in healthcare, right? So, you know, the whole focus that has been so politically driven versus people driven, the fact that it's been about pricing versus access and making sure people are healthy. My hope is that through COVID-19, people will have learned a huge lesson around the fact that you can still make money and be highly competitive, but still have empathy and gratitude and care about the people you're serving. And I think at the end of the day, nobody who lives in this country will leave this era of COVID untouched by this. And I hope that we can carry this through, because I walk around with sort of this mental word cloud, and I kind of create these word clouds around myself when I think about where we are right now. And I think about words like gratitude, empathy, sustainability, collaboration. I mean, what I love right now is seeing all these companies that I have worked with for years and years and years, and they had all these walls up and they were always competing with each other. And now they're getting together and joining hands and talking and working together and trying to bring things to market and trying to help solve all these problems. And for me, that is so meaningful. And I know it's meaningful to all the people that I work with and I kind of play with every day. Authenticity, you know, Rob talked about advertising. And it's so funny now when we watch DTC ads or even watch regular advertising, I see when people kiss on TV or hug on TV, I'm like, oh my God, they're not supposed to do that. So like we've taken on sort of a whole new meaning in our worlds. And so anything that comes across to us from an imagery perspective or a contour perspective has to really relate to what we're going through. It doesn't mean they have to talk COVID, but it does, the images need to kind of match up with the way we're seeing the world. So, you know, these are the kind of things that we're going to take forward with us in life. I think, you know, young people especially are so heavily affected by this. They're kind of growing up now in a world that none of our parents ever expected. We need to support them. I mean, I'm talking about our employees as well as our own children and people around us. So it's going to be really interesting when we look back a year. I'm not saying this is going to be over in a year, but when we look back in a year and look what we've been through and how much we've survived and sustained and have learned from to move forward with, and see what we're talking about a year from now here.
Yeah. You know, I hope it's not a year, but you know, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We don't know when that vaccine is going to come to market. We don't know if the majority of the US population is going to even want to take a vaccine. So there are a lot of unknowns that are still out there that are going to, you know, leave us under a little bit of a cloud for some time. You know, one of our folks from the audience just wrote in about trust. And it's about that trusted relationship with the pharmaceutical industry. 30 years ago, it was the most trusted industry in our country. And over time that eroded. And so now we are seeing that momentum that you all talked about building back up. So let's talk about that momentum and what pharmaceutical companies have to do to maintain that upward trajectory and not lose the public's trust as we go forward. Wendy, you want to kick us off? You're nodding.
I'm looking forward to hearing what Rob and Laura have to say, but sure. I mean, I think that trust is based on the fact that the public believes that the industry is trying to help the situation and not making it about money, but making it, as Rob said, about science and looking for ways to solve the problem. And I think if we can find ways to sustain that, not every company right now is coming out with a vaccine. Not every company is working on a diagnostic. Not every company is working on a treatment. But there are many, many companies that are working with patients with chronic diseases to try to help them. So, you know, it's about all these different things that come together, and companies really showing that it's the value of the human being over the value of the dollar they're making. And in that, I truly believe they will make as much money as they did in the past. It sounds a little bit naive. I'm sure a lot of people will say, no, that's not true. And I would love to hear Laura's opinion, but I truly believe that when you put people before profits, you will be profitable. And so I think we need to just keep that in mind as we move forward and not lose this incredible aura that has been created. And remember that every day we are earning the public's trust, that we should not take it for granted.
Agreed. Laura, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'd love to. I couldn't agree more with Wendy. I think, as somebody that's been in this industry for, over 2 decades, we have a responsibility to the to patients, to populations, that we have to be a source of trustworthy information, especially in this time of the pandemic, where honestly, everybody is starving for reliable sources of information. It's better to underpromise and overdeliver in this kind of ecosystem that we're especially in right now. My perspective is that we need to actually engage in the above drug, the above treatment, the above vaccine, collaboration with the public and the private entities, focused on quality of care, helping to shape and inform the delivery of care that will improve population health, while minimizing the overall incremental cost. So one of the things that I think is extremely important is, as we know, the 9 CEOs, as Rob mentions, have signed the CEO pledge that, we're going to bring it forward when we have the science to support bringing it to the population. So while part of this public image, continuing this to strengthen our public image, we have to be about, getting people well, getting the population well, building up herd immunity, helping patients, identify places they can get it, making sure that vaccines are affordable for patients, making that manufacturers need to have on their back. We need to help from beginning to end so patient gets that shot in their arm. And I think this is critical with the focus really on get a vaccine. Wendy talked about campaigns and communications. We need to come out and say, the science is ready. We're ready for you to take the vaccine, and go take one. And I am of the belief, couldn't agree with Wendy more, that when we raise that ability and the confidence in vaccines and treatments for COVID, everybody profits. Manufacturer profits because of their innovation, but also in addition, overall society, because we're going to lower the cost and people are going to be healthier.
Excellent conversation. Rob, you've been quiet for a little bit. So I'd like to tap back into you. So what are some of the other things that you're seeing through your research that might add to our conversation right here?
I think that Laura and Wendy have hit a lot of the key points, and really where a lot of the research also speaks, right? Being today, more so than at any other time, across companies, it's being a problem solver, right? We do this large annual study we've done for 21 years called this year it's being released, or the last 2 years it's been released with Axios Harris Poll 100. All the leading companies that as of July really stand out, these are all very pragmatic problem-solving companies. They certainly have a vision, they certainly have aspiration, but today they're delivering, right? This is one of the reasons why pharmaceutical companies are really standing out, right? So it's science-based solution delivery, right? The more we can have that kind of headspace right now, and just focus on solving problems, right? Solving big problems, and then also solving hard technical problems. I love kind of both the narrative that Wendy and Laura laid out, right? Because there's, in the pharmaceutical industry, there's not just one type of problem, there's a lot, right? It's not like we can just stop doing the more technical things, or we can stop doing more of the big picture things, but it's big on problem solving. And again, the pharma industry right now is in a much better position on trust. Like when you actually look at trustworthy voices around the vaccine, pharmaceuticals are amongst the highest. Over 70% of the public would trust pharmaceutical companies. And you actually get a lot of equity, even pharma companies that have vaccine expertise but aren't directly working on the COVID vaccine. But they're not necessarily as trusted as, for example, doctors and nurses or leading hospital systems, right? So it's not saying but it just reinforces the levels of kind of collaboration and, in particular, science-based problem solving that we want to bring to bear, right? So we definitely need to be thinking about some of those other groups and how we're really working closely with them and very proactively with them. And as both Wendy and Laura said, is the more we put the patient at the center, the easier it is for all of those things to happen, right? If everybody feels that we're actually delivering on people that are dealing with, whether it's COVID or, rare disease or chronic disease, right? There's a lot of problems to solve in healthcare, and pharmaceutical companies are extraordinarily well set up right now to be just, big time science-based problem solvers.
Yeah.
I love that it's about the science. And I think you all are right. It's the rising tide lifts all boats. So whether or not a company is directly involved in a COVID study, they are feeling that halo effect.
Right.
And it's also increasing acceptance by the public to participate in clinical trials as an offshoot, which has been a chronic problem within the industry for decades. So it took a pandemic to get people to understand what a clinical trial study was. And that's unfortunate, but that could be seen as a silver lining, if you will. And I think we need to look for those silver linings wherever we look today. Mm-hmm. So I'll take that one as a win for us. And I will leave you, Wendy, with the last word as we have to exit out in just a minute or so. And then I will thank the panel. So,
okay, well, one of the things we haven't really talked about, which I would love to just bring up on this call, is the fact that in addition to making sure we're focusing on all the COVID-related important discoveries in science and the trust and the reputation of the industry, the other place where the industry can really win is by making sure that the public remains healthy beyond screenings, taking care of their health, skin checks, all the different things. We have to get back to taking care of ourselves. We released some information last week. It's probably the subject of another discussion around their health. We found that 70% of it was published in Prevention Magazine as part of the campaign that we do called Healthy Her. We found that 70% of women, not only have they not gotten screened during COVID, they have never gotten screened. So I just want to do a call out to people out there saying we have to stay healthy and we have to keep our families and our friends healthy. So it's incumbent on all of us to engage with them. Mental health issues are through the roof right now. We have to help our friends and our families with mechanisms and resources and ways to keep ourselves healthy from a mental health perspective. And also things like alcohol consumption are off the chart. I love the fact that now I can go back out with my friends on the weekends, but certainly don't want to increase my alcohol consumption by 36%, which is what the survey showed. So I just want to say that in addition to the COVID-related trust and reputation and thankfulness to all the different manufacturers who have jumped in the game with speed and flexibility to get this done in the collaboration, I think we also just need to remember that there are millions and millions of people out there that we need to help as part of our communications role, as our health role, to keep them healthy and keep them going to their doctors, their nurses, et cetera, and not kind of take on a whole new kind of epidemic.
Absolutely. I can't thank you all enough for being part of this important conversation and this discussion that needs to continue on. And to that note, I would like to encourage everyone who has been listening with us to follow our thought leaders on Twitter to continue this dialogue using the hashtag PharmaVOICE100. Their individual handles are on the speaker tab at pharmavoice100.com. And I can't thank our speakers enough, as well as GCI Health. Wendy, thank you so much for making this think tank possible. And I wish everyone a good afternoon.
For more PharmaVoice 100 content, visit www.pharmavoice100.com.